What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the PVP podcast, where we talk about real estate, business, and everything in between. And today's guest was actually on the show 6 months ago, but we said we were going to invite him back for part two, and we did. So, Anthony, welcome back. And this is part two.
Yes, sir. Hello. Welcome. I'm very happy to be back. I was excited last time. It was a great episode. Time for part two. Talk about maybe a little bit more what I do now. We focus so much on the past before. We had no time to go into what I actually do.
Yeah. And and like part two, I know part one we did in a physical format. We switched virtual lately for multiple reasons. So, but we're going to make the best out of it, and we did talk about what you used to do the last time we had you in the studio, but tell us what you've been doing since the last podcast episode that you were on and how your business has been going.
Since the last, well, a lot has happened. I pivoted a lot, but to the base, right? Well, I've always been in the business of right? E-commerce, specifically reselling through Amazon. I briefly talked about it on the last episode, but to go a little deep dive and then to expand on how it's evolved in the past year, I just, again, buy stuff from retail websites, Sephora, Canadian Tire, Walmart, and I flip them on Amazon. I identify them before, right? I know it's going to sell at a certain price. I buy the inventory beforehand. I send them. It's not drop shipping. I buy the stuff. I send them to Amazon, and then they do the fulfillment for me. But last time I was on, I was actually selling 90% exclusively in the United States. I was selling Canadian products, right? Only sold here in Canada. And I was exporting them to the United States through a specific loophole, Section 321. But since Trump took over, that since August has been completely abolished. So I went from around $800,000 of yearly sales. 90% of it was all done through the United States. And I had to pivot 100% to domestic, and all I do is sell in Canada. Still same business model. I buy from the same retailers. I sell on Amazon.ca instead of Amazon.com, but it is now 100% domestic, which I'm really excited. That's got me through so much. Now I am also opening up. I started a YouTube channel specifically on selling domestically on Amazon, because you have a bunch of content for American sellers, but not Canadian. So I've done a ton in the past year, and I think that there's so much more to be done this year to conquer that landscape of Amazon Canada.
Yeah. But was there a shift in demand for products when you switched from US to Canadian? Was there a shift in sales? What did that look like when you switched?
Yeah, I think for many industries, right? I have a specific, my industry is different, right? E-com is very volatile. It could be very depending on international law, but I'm sure it's the same in real estate. It's the same in any really retail. Is you're going to have more volume in the United States. The United States has 10x, right? Just in the state of California is the amount of Canada, right? Or almost the same number. So of course you're going to have so much more volume over there. But in terms of my business, which is ultimately reselling and arbitrage, it's about deploying capital. So if I only have $100,000 of capital to deploy and I'm trying to get a return on that, well, okay, yeah, there's more volume in the United States. So I could just potentially get only 20 to 30 good products, and those can potentially sell hundreds of times per month, and I can deploy all that capital through a small amount of inventory. But in Canada, it's a completely different game, even though it's the same business model. You might see things, instead of selling hundreds of times per month, might only sell 10 to 15 times per month. So you got to go a lot more wide, right? We have a saying in our industry, it's better to, and for Canada, it's better to go wide than deep. Don't go get 100 units, get 100 different units and get one of each, right? It's going to help you spread out, just like stocks, right? You're spreading out your risk, so you're not holding the bag of a product that potentially went sour or the listing when the price dropped or whatever. So Canada's a lot more adjusting based off that, so much less volume, but we still have to ship across the country. From Quebec to BC is the same from New York to California, where they have 10 times the amount of shipment. So logistically, it gets a lot more complicated in Canada. But the thing is when you have 10x the amount of people and 10x the amount of volume down south in the States, well, that also means you have 10 times less the competition in Canada. So it's about making that differentiation. You have opportunity everywhere, whether it's the United States or Canada.
I mean, I think that there's a lot more, there's a lot more loops and hurdles when it comes to Canada for certain things. You know what I mean? But, and not to get too political about it, but you had said since August, things have changed for you, which is why you've pivoted to Canada. Do you think you'll pivot back to the US at all when, things lighten up a little bit, or certain restrictions, or some red tape? Do you see that changing?
Yeah, well, I mean, the international trade laws need to get established again when things get developed and the
Yeah.
dust settles a bit. I'll definitely reevaluate it. I think what I've learned is logistically staying inside Canada is just easy because I'm here. So the processes are significantly easier, and there's a lot more paperwork when it comes to exporting to the United States. And I was also going through a specific loophole that I don't think will come back. So
Okay.
with everything that is tariffs and whatever they end up negotiating, that's all going to play a factor. I honestly don't know. I love selling in the United States. I'm not going to lie. I would return there tomorrow to sell if it was logistically really easy. But right now, it's not something that I would tell. Like I have students and all that for Amazon, and I doubt not to go to the United States just because right now it's so hard and there's so much friction. It's not worth it. Focus. All because there's more volume, it's not going to fix all your problems.
No.
Yeah, it's easy. And this again goes for every industry. Yeah, it's easier because you have more eyeballs on you, more potential leads and everything. But if you're going to be a master in your business, whether you're in Canada or United States, you should be able to succeed. That's not an excuse.
I think volume is one of these subjects that people, misinterpret it. Like, just because you have more volume doesn't mean you necessarily have more profit. Of course, in various businesses and everything, it's like that. Like, for example, property management, just because you have more doors doesn't mean you have,
Yeah, it's all about margin,
profit,
man.
right? And sometimes, like, you'll have in property management specifically, because I know a thing or two about it, you'll have, 20% of your portfolio that gives you enough work for the other 80%, but they're not necessarily paying as much as the other 80%. So I think that people misconstrue volume a little bit, because some people focus on quality over quantity, right? So again, having buyers, let's say, for your products, having, one buyer who's going to continuously buy versus having multiple buyers that might buy once. People might think, having more buyers is good, but not necessarily, because if they buy once, that cost per lead or that cost per acquisition might not be worth it. But if they buy 5 to 10 times or 5 to 10 products, the volume is not always necessarily good, depending on how you look at it.
Completely agree. The 80-20 rule, like you said, most of the time, 20% of your stuff is going to generate 80% of your profit. You can apply that to so many different things. And you hinted on it too, right? It's all about margin. And in my business, we like to talk top line sales because it's nice and beautiful. I say $800,000 sales, but the reality of it is we're hitting, 10 to 20% margins depending on how much you delegate.
I
So,
see that
okay,
in your
cool.
posts. I see
Right?
that in the post profit margins, and there's a
Exactly, right?
percentage.
It's not like the top number, but
Yeah.
the gurus and all that, I like to base off transparency. So I like to try
Yeah.
to show that, like, hey, look, like I do generally pretty good profit too, but it's not the same as the top line. And you'll have people that do millions, but they're only doing 4 or 5%. And there's no problem with that. The Walmarts of the world do that, like super small margin and do very, very high volume. But I think that that's more for the, and I say this lightly, like the professional. And what I mean by that is, like, you have 5 to 10 years worth of experience, and then you want to scale up and then reduce your profit margin so you can go and hit really, really big top line numbers. But before you do that, you need to master yourself at a small scale, maximize your margins, understand like how you actually make money, no matter the business model, and then you scale that way. And okay, now you can then sacrifice some margin points to delegate and to scale a lot quicker. But before that, you need to master your business. I think people jump too fast into things, whether it's property management or any other business model. They want to grow too quick without learning the fundamentals.
I got a story about that. Yeah. I got a story about that. In 2021, I scaled my property management company. We doubled our doors in 7 months. And I thought that was great. I went from, like 70 doors to 150. And I thought that was great until I realized that there's, when it comes to scaling, you have to go at a certain speed because there's logistical factors, systems, you know what I mean?
You need to build them out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Now I have less, but the saying less is more is actually valid, right? So like that year there, I doubled the amount of doors, and it worked. Like it was good at face value, and it worked until it didn't work because I didn't I didn't scale with the systems. I didn't scale the procedures. I scaled the amount of work, but not everything else that makes the work work.
Exactly, right? I can only imagine. 'Cause I only have 5 doors. I can only imagine
Yeah.
the amount of doors that you had, and it's like, cool, you see the top line numbers grow significantly right away, 'cause and your projected income for the year is significantly higher, but you don't think about all the phone calls that you're gonna get that are also significantly higher, and how you have to delegate that, and, okay, everything on paper looks good, and that's, again, all industries. It looks good. You underwrite a property, you go, "Hey, look, this is how much it's gonna cost to manage this property, it's gonna be all good," until the phone calls, and then you're doing something else, and now it's taking away from your family time, taking away from whatever specific time you want to allocate, and it takes your energy, and you don't think about that.
And there's a huge physical component too to my business, right? To like that was, for example, if you scale sales on online e-commerce, it's good, but there's less of a physical component to it. Meaning when I scaled my amount of doors, I looked at the top line number, but I didn't think about the bodies that I needed to service. You know what
100%.
I mean? And then what happened was we were a small team and we doubled our volume. And then obviously everyone else felt double the pressure, double the tasks. But then the employees are ever revolving doors, right? They work well for a year and a half, 2 years, but then chances are they move on, and then I had lost those employees, which made the situation even worse because I couldn't find adequate replacements for them. But when I looked at the top number, it was
Everything
great.
was going good.
It was great. But then as I went on, I realized everything else, and then there's such thing as scaling too fast, and especially in a physically demanding job. There's online stuff, something that doesn't require you to displace yourself. Whereas, that was a factor that I didn't take into account. Right?
100%. And even that, I'm going to counter just a bit, like, just to say, you're 100% right, because when you have 700 doors, you got to physically go and inspect and all these things. But even when it comes to people that want to scale fast with ecom, like I said earlier, I don't do drop shipping. So I receive these products. So if now you've never ever bought anything to sell online and you're like, "Anthony, I want to grow as quick as you in 1 year,"
Yeah.
and somehow you miraculously do it, well, that means there's going to be every single week, I don't know, 50 boxes in front of your front door, and delivery people every single day ring. What happens if you're working? Are you going to have a plan for that? What happens if the delivery people leave it in your front door and then you get a package stolen? That happened to me, right? You know that.
It was around Christmas so lot.
Exactly. So there's so many logistical, and I love that we're on this topic, because again, every single industry goes through this. How long does it take you to get competent at your first job when you were there at your 9 to 5? It's probably going to take you a year, 2 years, 3 years to actually be serviceable for your company. And it's very expensive for those key companies to train people, because competency is built through time. You can't replace that. I can give you a dictionary full of information on how to succeed in my business. You're not going to do it without spending the time and effort of doing it for a year plus. So again, what is it that you learn? Because it's easy to say you learn through time. Okay, what is that wizardry? We do jujitsu. It's the same thing. You learn through time. It's what is it that's time? It's just the mental energy that you're spending. You're creating systems in your brain, and you're wiring things together of certain paths of, like, oh, this is how I do my bookkeeping for my business. You're not going to instantly learn that in your first month. So whether it's in your business model or my business model, or you want to do landscaping, take your time to learn your business. You're not going to succeed in 6 months. And if you do, congrats. But most of the time, it's not.
No, and people, when it comes to business, they, like I said, they make that mistake that I made, looking at the top number. And just because you sold $800,000 of goods on Amazon last year doesn't mean you made $800,000 of profit. Profit margins could be 10, 15, 20, 25%. A lot of people don't, when it comes to profit margins, whatever business you're in, I think a lot of people don't establish a profit margin. So like when, like for example, a partner and I were looking to close on something and in the US property. And the first thing we did when we had our first meeting before we even went out looking for something was, what's the amount of cash flow you're happy with every month? Whatever that number is, after all my expenses are paid on my property and my rents, and after everything is paid, what's that number? 300, 400, 500,000. What's that number? Right. So we established that number, and it just made the rest of the process and the acquisition much easier, because we established I'll say profit margin for the sake of this podcast episode, but we established a cash flow. Whereas a lot of people, they're operating on 10, 12, 13, 15% profits and they're doing $1 million in volume. Sure, that's great, right? But then, someone who's doing $800,000 in volume that's operating on 25% profits might see a better return, So I think people need to establish profit margins, whatever business you're in.
Well, that's where we see like two different pillars. You'll have like your service businesses where you'll have like crazy high margin, because often if you're doing a service, the skill comes from the competence. So whether it's like example, coaching to a point of like blue collar of having the skill of landscaping, you're able to charge and get margins that are significantly higher than doing your more brick and mortar type of business models where you have to spend a lot of money first. So your margins get thinner, and that we share a little bit, because whether you're in real estate or you're in e-com, or whether you're owning goods and then you're planning on making money with it, that's where margins become super important. And there's also a ton of like, people don't understand their true margins. They don't look at all the little expenses that get lost, right? I'm trying to think for real estate. I don't have like the best examples, but every time you buy something, right, and you didn't think to put it on your credit card and you don't track that statement, that's an expense that you can write off that you don't get back. And so there's so many ways of increasing your margins. There's and I actually learned this in the real estate world, is you can increase your revenue through increasing rents or optimizing your property. But you can also lower your expenses. And that's another way of optimizing your profit margin, because maybe you're doing something, I don't know, that's increasing your heating so much, your heating bill, and you can just put a hydro pump and now all of a sudden your heating bill goes down. So yeah, you spent a little bit, but now you optimize your margin that way. And I love that. I'm a data freak. I love margins and stuff like that. And you can optimize, those little tweaks can go so far for you. And certainly in real estate world where you're going on multiples, right? So you can quickly increase your multiple by like delivering 2-3% extra margin.
Yeah, and like I've done that with buildings too, where when we acquire a new building under management that either the owner had just bought and taken over, and when he bought it, the old owner had snow removal included. And snow removal is a $3,000 to $4,000 expense depending a year, or $2,000 to $4,000 expense depending per year. And when it comes renewal time, we've hit them with the rent increases and the removal of the inclusion. So not only do we increase the rent revenue, but we decrease our expense, right? So I totally get what you mean, because a lot of people, when it comes to business, and I didn't understand this in the beginning, is EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. 9, maybe 7 out of 10 people might not understand it, but EBITDA is something that you need to understand too, right? And you need to know what your earnings, before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization is, because, for example, you build a company, these are how most of the companies are evaluated anyways. Even if they're evaluated with a multiplier, right? Let's say this company will sell for 8 times the EBITDA, or 9 times, or whatever. You still need to understand what the EBITDA is.
It's everything with accounting, to be honest. I think everybody, if you're a business owner, you need to understand at least the basics, right? And it's actually funny we mentioned this, because on like we mentioned, I have my own YouTube channel for my Amazon, and I'm doing a whole episode with a CPA accountant, because I think that's so important for every business model, having a relationship, one, with your accountant, and 2, understanding what they're giving you every quarter, like your balance sheet and your P&L and everything that goes along with that. And again, this goes through flush every single industry. You have so many good operators, right? Certainly in the service business, people are really good at doing what they offer and how they make money, but then they don't understand the back end on everything that goes along with that, the expenses, and they only know how to produce, and they don't even know how to optimize. And that's another thing. So just the understanding of accounting, and either through a relationship with a CPA that like you can really go back and forth with and you can actually learn from. And if not that, in today's day with AI, you can go in depth and learn about your own business model and how you can optimize things just by having chats with them.
I was just thinking, when you mentioned accounting, A, I think everyone should have a basics in accounting, but B, ChatGPT is just so powerful. You know what I mean? And you could throw out anything on there and it'll give you pretty close to adequate and accurate information. Like, it's so powerful. And I think that even if you're using AI to understand accounting, and not to mention all the tools that there are, with AI, I think, there's no excuse not to understand it. I could literally have ChatGPT explain to me the responses and the instructions and everything with the voice, so I don't even have to put the effort of reading it, right? You know how ChatGPT sometimes will put 10 points. Some people might look at it like, oh, I had 10 points, but I can literally hit that volume button and it'll talk it to me, right? So there's no excuse not to learn whatever you need.
100%. And
Yeah.
even like PDFs, right? So every year, you're certainly, if you're like a corporation, you're going to get a management report with a bunch of data and a bunch of accounting jargon. And why don't you just plug it in and ask it, hey, I know nothing about accounting, but can you help me understand my numbers? How profitable am I truly? Because again, so many great operators out there, but they don't understand their true numbers and if they're actually on a path of true profitability. And okay, yeah, you can have conversations with your accountant, but you only have a specific time allocated often. With ChatGPT or Gemini or your chosen AI of choice, you can go and have multiple conversations. Now, these days, I spend time and I don't really email my accountant as much unless it's a really complex question, because often I can get the answer instantly with AI, and it's going to be pretty accurate, if not 100% true. So I'm just going to move forward, and I use it every single day for every single aspect, and understanding my true numbers is 100% something I use it for.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. So, well, I mean, with that being said, we need to take a quick break from a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back after this.
Inspections. Mercurio is a trusted and experienced inspection firm known for their thorough, professional approach and attention to detail. They specialize in providing clear, easy-to-understand reports that help buyers, sellers, and investors truly understand the condition of a property before making important decisions. Their commitment to transparency, accuracy, and reliability makes them a valuable partner in any real estate transaction. Our trusted partner since 2018.
All right, guys, welcome back to this episode of the PVP podcast. So right before the break, you had mentioned something about YouTube. Now, I've been seeing your YouTube channel lately. You posted something the other day, daily comments. Tell me like what you're doing on YouTube, why you started it, where that came about, because it's very niche from what I understand.
Yeah. This is actually something that gets me really excited these days, because I think there's a big opportunity coming. People like us, right? People that doesn't necessarily need fast action, fast paced Mr. Beast type videos with a bunch of views. We're just interested in business. And for you, you have your own niche and your own business model. I have my own, but understanding your market and being there for the person that was essentially in your shoes when you started, that was my whole basis starting my channel. Because when I started Amazon Canada, I was writing on YouTube how to sell on Amazon Canada, and there was nobody making these types of content. I decided, hey, I had a lot of trouble. I'm sure there's other people like me out there that have trouble starting on Amazon. Nobody's making that content. Why don't I be that person? So I just started posting. I don't really know much. I'm good in front of a camera, but in terms of posting on YouTube, I didn't really know much about it. And slowly but surely, now I'm gaining traction, and people are commenting every single day on exactly what I sought out for. They're saying, there's nobody out there. Thank you so much for being just there, right? I need to be that good. I'm just there supporting them. And I think everybody watching this that is competent in a niche, you'd be surprised how just getting in front of a camera and speaking to yourself when you started and all the problems that you had that you wished you were answered, how much of a following you can actually gather. Doesn't matter how competent you are in front of a camera, just sitting down and answering those questions can go a really long way. And for me, I started, if you look at my YouTube channel, I have older videos that I just talked about business philosophy, but I actually started in late October, beginning November. So 2.5 months ago, and I'm already at 400 subscribers, averaging 200 to 300 views every video. So It's just about making videos for yourself and truly wanting to help people. And that's what's getting me excited for 2026. I want to keep growing that and explore that channel and adding that vertical into my business model, because like, it's again, for me, my younger self.
And I think that, like we've all followed somebody on YouTube or online at one point or another, and like I get most of my information from YouTube, I get a lot of information. I mean, reality is when we want to know a video, first of all, everything is on YouTube,
You
right?
can get all your info. You don't need to pay for one
Everything.
course.
And there's somehow a video tutorial for every single thing you could think of on YouTube. And I started it on YouTube, and I still use YouTube. And a lot of the people that I follow, I still follow on YouTube, right? So everybody has somebody that they can look up to on YouTube. The thing is, it's a very powerful platform, but I don't think it's a very powerful platform. But I don't think that I think that there's some professionals that don't utilize it the way it should. Like, I don't utilize it the way it should. I know I should, right? But it also operates very different from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and the other social media platforms. And that's the thing with social media and online stuff. Man, they all have their like specialties, you know? They all have like Facebook, like Instagram is more for branding, whereas Facebook is less for branding, but it's better for interaction and actually, acquiring business and setting up calls and this and that. Whereas like Instagram is more like a virtual resume. And then YouTube is completely in a because it was essentially the first thing before Facebook and Instagram. YouTube came out, right? So it's like the oldest platform.
So you know what I love about all this talk is that for me, I went to school. I didn't go past CJEP, right? But I went to school for marketing. And that was actually one of my biggest like bonuses in life, is because I always have that background. And I hear you speak as a property manager. I hear you start speaking about understanding all these different social media platforms and how they specifically work differently. And it gets me excited because we get to see now the evolution of capitalism in the way we have access to the AI and this technology, where everybody's going to need to become a marketer. Yeah. In some way. If you are an entrepreneur and you're doing at least B2C, and I'd argue even B2B, but at least B2C, you need a way to get eyeballs, and your traditional way of doing it through TV ads and newspaper, and that doesn't exist anymore. So you need to figure out how to get on there. And that's where I might have my bias. I think that it is important to be everywhere. If you really want to dominate like branding, you do need to be on every single platform. I say that.
Be shy.
You can't. But depending on the relationship you want to build with somebody in terms of your client, I think YouTube is, or YouTube or any long form content, right? Podcast included, because you're spending time with your customer, and they're understanding you more and more, and they can build a relationship with you. And that's something you just can't get with short form content these days. But that's not to mean it's not good. It's just that the connection with the viewer and essentially a client is going to be so much more through these long formats, and they could really understand, well, that's just how intelligent you are and how confident you are in the subject. Like that's why I'm a big fan, and I essentially only do YouTube. I have my Instagram, but YouTube is where I spend most of my time producing content.
Yeah, you're talking about like you have to be out there, you have to be seen and everything. And I was having a little meeting with my partner last week. Anthony was on the podcast with us the first time around, and we were talking about content. We've been doing different things in the last year, content wise, right? We were talking about content, but one thing that he did say is, like, you need to get more out there. And he used a specific example of like his uncle who's in his 50s. He spoke about a local coach here in Montreal, who coaches people in real estate, and it's a woman. And he spoke of a local coach, and he said, my uncle in his 50s knows who she is, and he doesn't even use social media. So that means that like she's out there, and not to say like he doesn't have it, but he doesn't use it, right? He's not connected to it like maybe a younger person might be, someone in their 20s, right? And so that's really a testament to like being out there, and learning. And then, he offered some people like what's real. So they
100%.
they love what's real. And a lot of people out there are, that do social media don't necessarily do what's real.
I think authenticity reigns through, right? Like that's where long form, again, not to beat that same drum, but that's where long form you really get that connection, because as you said, so many people fake it. And in a short clip of 8 seconds to 30 seconds, it's easy to fake a lifestyle. It's easy to fake, again, just a lifestyle or the day in a life videos, right? A day in a life video, I can spend an hour Okay. And it's going to make it seem like I'm the most productive person in the world.
Yeah. And then
Right?
you're nothing but doing 8 hours. Yeah.
Exactly. When we're talking together right now and I'm going into detail talking about margin and such, you know that I'm not talking out of my ass. I do have a business. I did like do ecom. You can ask me any question you want and I'm going to answer it to my best of my ability. But in a short form or anything like that, that's where I don't find it as worth it because you don't get to build that authenticity with the viewer. And I think it's a trend coming. More and more people want that true, authentic transparency from, and less of the gurus, right? More actual operators telling the real story. And that's where I think we're going to see the rise of the small creator and the small operator in 2026 and beyond, because more and more people want to take this path of entrepreneurship and such, but they're stuck now going through this hyper production gurus that are flashing things on Instagram and getting our attention span. But people are going to wake up and people are going to go towards the people that are more professional, even without the viewership.
And I know that firsthand that it's BS, because I have a friend slash, acquaintance slash colleague of mine who over the summer, and if you're listening to this episode, I appreciate you, but who over the summer rented a Ferrari and spent a day with this Ferrari filming a bunch of content around Montreal. And I see that content on various platforms, various ads with various message. Now he does well for himself. Don't get me wrong. It's not that he doesn't do well, but he doesn't drive a Ferrari. And I know that firsthand, so it was interesting to see that from like a insider's perspective, I guess, because there is a lot of fluff out there. And one guy that I follow, he's actually a local guy from here in Montreal, E.T. Fox. He says it a lot. He says, don't pay attention to the people who are out there in helicopters, private planes, Lamborghinis, because these are often the ones that are faking. These are often the ones that it's all satire. And he's like, because some of the more, and 8 different countries, has X amount of companies, and he speaks with celebrities and everything, and he doesn't flash much, and he says, like, all the people around me don't flash this stuff, right? And he does business with the most successful people. So there's a lot of fluff out there. I've seen it, witnessed it firsthand. There's a lot of fluff out there. Authenticity is definitely something that's lacking.
I think for the viewer, finding a viable coach is such a big challenge. And again, not to beat the same drum, but that's where authenticity and the small creator is going to reign in 2026 and beyond, because people are waking up to this BS. They're going and they're seeing all this content and they're starting to realize that the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris is probably a marketing ploy. And yeah, they still convert a percentage, but you got to tell yourself, like I talked about the margin before, right? The reality is the coaching business, the margin is very, very high. Things that you'll see right away to these people you should not trust is when you're going to book a call with them, if they're not the one at the actual call with you, because that's going to happen. I do a lot of research. I understand the business model, right? These people grow to the point where they're charging cohorts of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per head. And now it's too much for them to manage. So they're going to have a closer. They're going to have somebody there who's specialized in closing you and your excuses, right? That is that business model. So just seeing that is a red flag. And then the other one, you got to tell yourself, why are they going so hard on content? Right? How hard are they going on content? That's going to give you an idea. And what are they giving in that content? Right? Are they giving free information, or are they always giving fluff? Right? They're going really hard with their Ferraris, but it's always fluff. And you really want to know, you got to pay them. I would rather watch videos, be like, hey, this guy gives a lot of good content, or girl gives a lot of good content. Yeah. I wonder how much they would give me if I pay them. That's the psychology I rather like.
So it's funny that you mentioned coaching, because I know a thing or two. I've done some market research on this, and like we coach people about how they could buy real estate, but we don't teach anything that we've actually never done firsthand for our own acquisitions, or at the very, very, very least have helped a client or community member execute on their acquisition. So everything that we teach, we know firsthand one way or another. We've done ourselves, or we've guided someone through the entire process of it. And yeah, there's a lot of fluff coaches out there. And when we launched our coaching business, I did some market research. Market research was, clicking on these ads, clicking on these funnels, trying to get in there, trying to see what they were doing the one-on-one calls. I joined a few communities, not to say that I did the research and I'm not part of any communities or mentorships. I am, but I could tell you that who was more authentic than others versus like, I remember one guy who was the guy, not to drop any names, but who was the guy behind it. One of his had clicked on a funnel, and one of his, I'm going to call them appointment setters, called me up to set me up on a Zoom with him. And not to say that I was doing market research here. I wanted to buy into a coaching community. And he's like, okay, I'll set you up with this person, so-and-so, because it's his program and he'll meet you at this time on this Zoom. Nobody showed up on that Zoom. That guy never showed up. You know what I mean? And then, another community that I was considering, it was kind of like, oh, who are you? How much experience do you have? Well, these are our packages, 10, 20, 30,000. I think you deserve the 20,000 one because of your experience. Sent me the thing to sign right away. And I never signed it, but I could tell you that automatic signature thing was in my email for about a year after that. And then ultimately the community that I did choose, the person speaking to me was just really like, all right, what could we do to help you? How many meetings do you want? And he told me this, Dustin, shout out Dustin. Look, if you want 3 calls with me, 4 calls with me, no problem. And then at one point he's like, do you just want me to get the guy on the phone? And he put the guy on the phone. You know what I mean? And the guy, like in the middle of like after supper feeding his kid, jumped on the call, right? And a lot of coaches don't do that. They have the appointment setters, there's closers, like you said, trained to sell you on your excuses. Whereas other coaches, like the most return that I've got and the most like call to actions, like one-on-ones that I had with potential clients have actually come from me reaching out to them on Facebook posts that they made versus them clicking on my ads. Now, if I'm spending $1,000 a day or $1,000 a week on an ad or whatever my budget is per month, obviously the amount of money you inject will correlate to the amount of leads and everything. But all this to say is I reached out to people. Hey, I saw you posted a post on Ohio Real Estate Investors Club. You're looking for a mentor. This is what I do. Let's connect on a call. And I got more return from that by firsthand speaking to them from my account than them clicking on an ad, right? Which is something that a lot of coaches lack because, like you said, maybe they're too big.
And I think a lot of people, again, because I kind of want to convince people to start, people with competence, people listening to this that are aspiring to do something. If you have a competence, look how easy it is. Like sometimes it's just about posting so you're out there. So when you reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I can help you. I saw you post this. I have the answer to your questions. How about we work together? Look at all because essentially your Instagram, your YouTube and all that is a portfolio of your ability to help. And then you're just connecting. You're saying, hey, look at all the things I have here to offer you. I can help you. And we can go deeper into it and I can really teach you and help you succeed. Boom, you like clients that way. So again, the rise of the small creator is on its way in 2026 plus. And I think people should jump right into it if you have that competence.
Yeah, 100%. And so let's talk about this coaching thing for a second. You kind of alluded it a little bit, but if you're looking to hire a coach, whatever business it's in, real estate, e-commerce, health and wellness, fitness, whatever, what would you look for in a coach? Whatever the ticket is, right? 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, whatever it is, what would you look for if you were going to say, okay, I'm ready to, you're going to spend the 5,000, the 10,000, you're okay with that, but what would you look for to make you just wow?
So to start off with, it's worth it if you have the right one, because a lot of times that I think is the first question people are going to ask themselves. Is it truly worth it to spend X for the offer to work with somebody who's in the position that you want? And it is, because the reality is they're going to save you probably more in mistakes than you're going to spend. Now, what to look for? Because again, it comes back down to, do they actually do the thing they say? 1, how much content is there out there that is free from them that is actually valuable to you?
Yeah.
And then 3, how do they fit your vibe? And we got more, but at 3 is like, how does it fit in terms of vibe, right? Some people might be a lot more military in the way they teach, right? No emotion. This is what you got to do. If you don't do this, you're not going to succeed. And I don't want to speak to you, right? I only want high effort, high output. We're talking every day. So might be coaches out there that are a little bit more, hey, what can I do for you? how many times would you like to meet? The other one might be like, nah, it's 2 times per week. This is what it is, right? Understand the vibe that you're down with. Some people need the push in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Some people will prefer the military style. I'm just saying, understand what you want and make sure you vibe with them. But again, make sure that all their content is essentially the show and tell. If you're booking with a coach and you've never seen their content, probably not the best idea. Certainly if you're going to buy a $5,000 ticket thing. If you're spending $5,000, get the proof through their content, and you can validate almost everything through their content. Don't look at the lifestyle, right? Don't look at the fancy things like, hey, look at my day in the life vlog. That's not going to tell you if they're confident or not.
Yeah.
That's fluff. I want to see, again, let's attack a model, let's say real estate, right? Okay, are they actually breaking down underwriting in their videos and making it easy to understand? Are they legitimately giving you advice on ways, again, I'm not the specialist, you are, but like niche things that like every time you watch a video, you're like, I learned something. I learned something. Or is it after watching 20 videos, you're like, I see the repetitive theme here, and the guy's always at the end saying, click my link to work with me, and they didn't really give anything. It's always a little bit extra, like maybe you'll learn a tiny little bit, and then at the end, you'll get if you want to work with me more, click the link below.
Yeah.
Or maybe the person is actually very, very good, very competent, and saying like, hey, this is what I say to people. I don't have any secrets. You want to work with me? I'm not giving you any secrets. I give everything out for free. Working with me is I'm going to be like, I have a structured program. I'm going to be up your ass every single day. We're going to build your fundamentals and actually build a business through, I know my business, right? For Amazon, like we're going to build your accounting system, your tracking system and stuff like that. And that's what like potentially you can have to offer for somebody with property management. But at the end of the day, you need to find competence through their content. If you're going in there blind, they are trained. And like I'm telling you this, they are trained to answer your objections. You don't have enough money, they'll have an answer for that. You don't need to talk to your wife for you to have an answer for that. They haven't answered all your questions. So you need to determine beforehand, is this someone I really want to work with? Not based off lifestyle, based off competence, and then go in prepared, because they're gonna take you by the hand and they're gonna answer you they're gonna ask you specific questions, start making you feel emotions and all that. Instead of that, go into the interview prepared with your own questions. Don't let them dominate and dictate the way the interview is gonna go. Interview them. They're not interviewing you. At the end of the day, they want your $5,000, $10,000, right? Yeah, they're taking advantage of the fact that you want to succeed. So go in there prepared, and you'll be able to find the right coach, just like you did. You did multiple talks with multiple coaches. So like, it's all about being prepared for what you want to do.
Man, I did multiple talks with multiple coaches because, even before I thought about coaching or becoming a coach or becoming, someone who's looking for a coach, I've went to a ton of seminars, in various different fields. And I remember one, I was like, what the hell is going on here? I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, how the hell? I can't tell you what coach it was. I can't tell you the exact offer. I can't tell you any of this because I don't remember. It was in like 2016, 2017. But I could tell you that he had said something like, and we have it for, this is the special, this is the offering, and we have it for the last hour of this this conference or whatever. And I just saw people sign up is at the back of the room. And I just saw people literally get up from their seat and run to the back of the room.
Crazy.
It was insane. And the guy's probably charging 10, 15,000, whatever it is. Right. But the way they got up and they ran to the back of the room, and, maybe some of them did their research before, maybe some of them have been following, but out of the 50, 60, 70 people that ran to the back of the room, 10% might know this guy or have been following him, 20, 14, big deal, right? But the way they got up and they ran to the back of the room instantly, I was like...
It just goes to show how psychology goes and play a long way. And I hope that the viewer gets this from this video, feels a little bit more prepared, because I actually do think it's a very good thing to get a coach. Like I said, it can really help you accelerate your learning. And if you get a good coach, they're going to, again, in my business model, if you're going to go and purchase inventory and you're making a mistake, well, that $2,000 inventory purchase could be avoided. That mistake could be avoided just by consulting me if we work together. So if I charge you $3,000, $4,000, I might be able to save you in your first 3 months $100, $1,000 mistakes just through that.
I mean, I could tell you two things. I could tell you that my first year in real estate, when I started off as a broker, I wanted to do it by myself. And I was so convinced I was going to do it by myself. And I made 0 deals that year. I wasted more time more than anything. And then the next year, I partnered up with a woman who had been doing this for 8 years at the time. And in 1 year, I did 10 deals with her. Right. And that was based on her coaching. You know, I wouldn't have done those 10 deals alone. Most recently in 2020, 2021, when I had joined, you know, the 4 communities that I had joined, I did my research on them. You know, I will say this, although they were all strong in their own ways, a couple of their actual programs lack substance. So there's a done for you and done with you, you know, when it comes to coaching, right? So which one are you? And most people have the I want it done for me mentality, you know?
Better with, because you're going to learn through, like, it goes back, we're going to circle back to the beginning episode, right? You need time.
Yeah.
And that coach is going to help you with time. You got to try to take everything away from their brain, because they're going to give you all the available content that they have that they can help you with. But there's so many niche questions that come up through like time, like even real estate, like, hey, my door sweep is like, not, or like there's air coming in. What do I do? Just go to Reno Depot and get a, you know,
Yeah.
but those are such little things that someone might not think of. And when you're working with a coach, it's just always questions are answered very easily, because for them, it's just another day on the block.
Yeah, 100%, you know, and substance is a huge one when it comes to coaching, because I've seen one program in particular where I was like, there's no substance here. It's essentially a premium version of his YouTube videos, you know, the exact same setting, the exact same this, the exact same that, and just, you know, and I think substance, because a lot of people, you know, when it comes to coaching, they sell a program versus they sell experience, you know?
I like that.
One particular coach who came to Montreal, immigrated here in 2015, bought 3 properties, and then sold basically a program based on those 3 properties, versus others who are actively investing, who are selling
right?
experience.
Well, that's being the operator, right? You got to make sure that the coach is still operating and not only doing coaching, because that's a trap that most of these people end up falling into, is that the coaching gets so lucrative that they stop doing the actual operation. And then
Yeah.
you stop learning the ins and out of the business. So you might have experience, but every business model, every industry evolves with time. Last year I was selling in the States. Now I'm selling in Canada. It's a completely different landscape. And
Yeah.
if you're not in the business, you're not going to keep it up, and you're not going to be able to coach well.
No, and it changes and it evolves, right? So you need to learn, right? So like, you know, like for example, this one particular coach, who's the same guy that rented the Ferrari, by the way. He's selling programs based on strategies that he applied in 2016, 2015 and 16, you know, and like
Same
that
market.
doesn't apply anymore, you know, that doesn't apply anymore. And so yeah, so like that's something to consider, right? Someone who's excelling experience versus who's selling a program on a curriculum.
Yeah. And also, it just came to mind, like, again, in the real estate industry, of why having a good coach that's in the actual process of doing the operations is, let's look at variable interest rates, right? If you're a brand new buyer of real estate and you hopped in when real estate, when interest rates were maybe low, and all of a sudden we start seeing interest rates rise, you might have no idea what to do. And you're
Yeah.
going to panic your ass off. But an experienced real estate, well, a guy, either property management or real estate owner that's in the industry for a long time, knows exactly how to adapt. And just their words of, hey, we're going to get through this, don't worry, this is the plan of action, is enough to comfort you. And that's why it's so worth it to work with somebody. It's somebody to hold your hand through. Like, it's all good when things are good. When things are good, you don't need a coach. It's when things are bad that you need a coach and someone to help you pull through the dirt, because the game is staying in the game, right? How long can you stay in the game? In real estate, the longer you're in the market, the more you're going to make money, because
Yeah.
inflation's going to be here, and the top line is going to grow. In every business, it's how long can you stay in business? And working with a coach is that insurance of, it's going to help you always grind through the hard times and make it easier.
Yeah, 100%. And even the coaches have coaches, you know,
But everybody needs a coach.
and even just for accountability, just touching base with somebody once a week, you know, like some of the most experienced coaches have their own coaches. right? So I think that like coaching is something that I mean, I used to look at it as kind of like a Ponzi scheme, you know, or back in the day, or like something that like, until I actually did it. And then I realized, wow, this, you know, I should have done it a long time ago. You know, that example with that girl at the beginning of my career, right? It was very evident. And essentially she was like a coach, right? She mentored me at that second year of my career, and I did 10 times more than I did the first year, right? So
Everybody has a mentor. Everybody has a coach. If it wasn't for me, it wasn't a coach. It was a mentor, right? I hadn't paid him, but he was in my industry. And if it wasn't for him, like I was doing $25,000 a month in sales. I met him 2 months later. I was doing 80, right?
yeah,
All he did was give me permission to spend more. Told me, you know what you're doing. You just add a zero to what you're guys. I think I talked about this in the other podcast. You just add a zero to what you buy, right? Instead of buying 10,000, try to buy 100,000 or get closer, right? If you're confident in your business model, just go all in. That's all he told me.
Yeah.
And having that security, having somebody to be there with me while I scale, to give me permission to spend so much more money, helped me grow. He didn't do anything special. It's just meeting a person. And sometimes like I got lucky through networking, but you can accelerate that by just paying somebody that's in the shoes that you want to be in.
Yeah, 100%. So you offering coaching to anyone in your space that needs a coach, or what do you?
Well, I'll let my content speak for it. Like I just went through I don't know how long this podcast is going to be, but I just said about authenticity. You can find me on YouTube, Anthony Mancini. You can write Amazon Canada, Anthony Mancini. You'll see all my content. I really try to give as much free content. That's something that wants to interest you. You can do this from your house, right? You order inventory from retail websites, you get it delivered to your house, and then from your house, you ship it to Amazon, and Amazon does all the selling for you. Prime, they take care of everything. They take 30% off the top, yeah, but you don't essentially need to leave your house. So it's awesome. Go learn from it from my YouTube channel. And then if you want to work for me, you really want to accelerate it, then you can get a link in the bio. It's going to be there. The classic things. I don't want to do my guru. I'll let the content speak for itself and let my knowledge speak for itself.
Amazing, man. Well, you know, like this was a super fun conversation. Fortunately, we're out of time again, but this was an awesome conversation. So I want to say, you know, thank you for coming back a second time.
Sir, part 3, maybe talk about VAs.
Third time's a charm. Third time's a charm. So, I mean, thanks again, man. And we'll definitely do a part.
Yes, sir.
Guys, for everyone watching us, you know, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, be sure to hit that like, comment, subscribe button wherever you're following us. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. And until next time, take care. Stop this.